Good. You look chipper this morning.
Well, he walked in this cold, dark morning, and he made it here, so that's why he's chipper.
I didn't mind the cold, but the dark, it really was dark. It was.
Thank you, Michael.
I don't know, they have a lot of street lights out.
It was my Machatana who convinced me to go with the battery valve. To go with hearing aids with batteries.
You mean rather than the recharge?
Yeah.
The recharge are better if you remember to put them in the charger.
Well,
are these all brand new for you?
Which?
The hearing aids.
I started using hearing aids this past summer.
So it's still you're still in Shana Rishina.
Yeah. No,
so why did she convince you to get
he did. Why? Because his answer was, what happens when you have a 3-day yontif? Then it's problematic.
I never find a problem. You change the battery before.
No. He's talking about
he happens to be a professor of audiology.
No, he's right.
He taught at Stern.
Even a 2-day yontif, depending on how bad.
Oh, he's back.
But okay, so his experience was
that you're better off with batteries.
Better off with batteries. And his practice is he changes the batteries every Friday. Every Friday. But he wears his all day.
So I wear mine all day.
Okay. Right.
But I change them twice a week. Because what happens is if you change it just on Friday, you kind of peter out Wednesday night or Thursday morning. And then you don't realize it until your wife thinks you ignore it.
Yeah, no, I understood that.
No, I agree. I had my battery went that Friday.
Yeah.
After Shabbos.
Yeah.
So I put it on the table.
Yeah.
My aide came in and saw it on the table, said, "Oh, the battery must be, she changed the battery."
Yeah.
Then I used it again.
Well,
that can happen.
Yeah. That's a problem. Wow.
Right. Okay. Let me start with our sponsors. A Year of Learning by Sue and Anani Garelick in memory of Malcolm Proman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meah ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, and in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell Irving and Pro Kaplan. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Friends of Nina Monesta, Nechama Asna bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Zecher Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. A month of learning by Lydia and Abe Krause's many friends in honor of their 50th anniversary. Josh and Carol Sanborn in memory of his parents, Chana bat Aryeh Shmuel Aryeh ben Bolach. Jill and Perry Meltzer in memory of her father, Yaakov ben Yosef. A week of learning, Leonie Meiselman in memory of her husband, Nissen Yitzchak ben Shlomo Zellman. The family of Esther Shepatovsky in her memory, Esther Reba bat Betzalel. Sid Paris in memory of his father, Chaim ben Aharon HaKohen. A day of learning plus Torah fun today by Gail and Milton Miller in commemoration of the Shloshim of Pesi Ackerman's mother, Fegi Basya bat Peretz. Also today, a day of learning by Anne and Lester Arfi in commemoration of the Shloshim of Pesi Ackerman's mother, Fegi Basya bas Peretz. Okay, excuse me, main Shemis Heavenliya, Crank of Fear, Velti Ashir Shemas Leah, Lechobane Israel, good to bench. Today's Gemara is not easy.
Oh, yes, up until now, it's been a safe.
Just that's true, but okay. I would like us to go back to start on Hey Amud Beis. Sorry. 5 lines up from the bottom. Okay, on Hey Amud Beis, Talmud Lomar. Or actually, I could start even before 1 line above that. Okay, Tanya Yechol Yehe Kavod Av V'Em Doche Shabbat. Okay, so that's the Gemara is raising this issue. We're still trying to clarify if an asay is mevatel, is doche, okay, a lo ta'aseh. That's still our basic problem, okay? And then we raise the question, well, what about examples of lavim connected with Shabbat, okay? Now, continuing with that issue, okay? So we have this question that the Gemara is suggesting there. Okay, what about this statement, right? Talmud Lomar, Ishimo Vaviv Tirau, Vet Shabtotai Tishmoru. Okay, Kulchem Chayavin Bichvodi. But all of them, in other words, okay, are father, mother, and the person is all required to show glory, kavod to Hashem. My love, the Amarle Shchotli Besarli. What about a situation, says the Gemara, where the father might say to the son, slaughter an animal for me, cook an animal for me, okay? Vitama, the Katav Rachmana, at Shabtotai Tishmoru. But, however, we have the reasoning that the Torah says you should observe my Shabboses, okay? Everybody. Namely, at this point, it would say that therefore an assay does overcome a law. Does not. You're not allowed to yet the animal because it's wait. Ha lav hachi dacher. Here, therefore, it does not. Now the Gemara then says, here then it does not knock it over. Does not docher. Okay? Lo. No, says the Gemara. As we go to Vav Amud Aleph now, Lav the Mechamer. No, says the Gemara, we're talking about a situation, okay, where the positive mitzvah, okay, is such that we're saying that it doesn't override, okay, because we're talking about driving or leading an animal on Shabbos, and not about the cooking or the slaughtering. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the cooking or slaughtering where the penalty is Misa or Torah.
Yeah.
Would not be done.
Right.
But what about if it's only in the
right, that's the point. Like pulling the end. That's the question. That would
be just stam of the
that would be a regular love, and therefore that would be that means there. So in that case, so the Gemara is trying to clarify if you're going to say it's a love which is punishable by karet, it's not going to work. But maybe only again in a regular love, we're saying that it is doche. That's the bottom line then of the Gemara. Okay? Ella, so what happens? Ella de kaimalan, right? So what are we saying here? Da ate aseh v'dache lo ta'aseh. Okay, so what about the fact here that we say in that normally, okay, we have a, right, that the assay comes and it is doche the lotas. Okay, So the Gemara then says, Ligmor mehacha, delo lidche. So let us learn, therefore, from here that it does not.
From the Mechamer.
Okay, from the example of Mechamer, since it's still a question of Shabbat, and even though it's a regular lav, or considered a regular lav, in this case, we're going to say maybe an asay does not dochesh Shabbat. Okay, a lo taseh, particularly. All right. So what happens? V'chi tema, and if you want to say shani lave de Shabbat, that we're going to say there's a uniqueness about a lav regarding Shabbat, and even though with the example of Mechamer, since it's still connected with Shabbat, the Chamire, that those tend to be more stringent. Okay, right? Vahatana ba'alma kai velo kapfrich. And here the Tana in general, okay, is saying that this case, and he doesn't raise a challenge. He doesn't raise a question about it. The Tanya, as we're taught, Yachol Amar Lo Aviv. Let's take another example. It's possible that a father might say to his son, Hitameh, make yourself tameh. Okay, this is an example of a situation where the father is a Kohen, the son is a Kohen. He's lost an object in the cemetery, and he tells the son, go into the cemetery and get this object, or do something. Oh, she'amar lo al tachzir. Or there was a object that was lost in general, or okay, and he said the son found the object, and he tells him, don't return the lost object. Okay? So what happens? Okay? Yachol, in other words, where we're suggesting here that kibud avaim is more stringent than that, the others. Okay? Talmud Lomar, perhaps we're right. We're going to say here, Ish imo va'aviv tirahu ve'et shabtotai tishmaru. That since the language of the pasuk is such that it would appear that kibud av might even be more stringent than and more overcome than the aspects of Shabbat. Right?
No.
What do you mean no? That's the answer is no, it's not going to be. Okay?
The pasuk precludes the Kohen becoming.
Well, we didn't get there yet.
That's what.
We didn't get, we're going to get to that in just a second. Now with the answer, the Gemara is saying, no, that's not the case because kulchem chayavim b'chvodi. Now that's the Gemara is telling us, okay? That's why I'm saying, no, even though the language of the pasuk might have raised.
The language of the pasuk is telling you that
no, that's what the Gemara is telling you. That's what the Gemara is telling me. Since you're all commanded, it doesn't do that. Okay? Right. Got to raise the shaila first, then answer. Okay? Ela mishum de'ikala mifrach. Why? Because here, there's that possible to challenge. Right? Malahanach. What are we saying here then? Shekain hechsher mitzvah. Why? Because that, perhaps it was only a preparation to do the mitzvah. Alasalka da'atach amina. It's possible I might say as follows. Tete mi binyan beit hamikdash. Maybe we'll learn it in regards to its being doche Shabbat with the example of the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, you find you're going to say Kibud Aveim doesn't work. Maybe I'll use another example. Okay, what's this other example? The Beit HaMikdash, the Tanya. Because here we again have Yechol Yehei Binyan Beit HaMikdash Doche Shabbat. It's possible I might have thought that the building of the Beit HaMikdash would be Doche Shabbat. However, we have another pasuk that's going to tell me, Talmud Lomar, at Shabtotai Tishmaru Umikdashi Tirau. Okay, so I have this another pasuk that's going to challenge it and tell me something else, namely, Kuchem Chayavim Bechvodi. Not only our people, but even the Beis Hamikdash has a requirement to honor Kadosh Baruch. Okay, so what happens? My love bebone v'soter. Aren't we then talking about a situation where it's both building and destroying, right? Vitam, okay, which is clearly exactly a chorus level, all right? Okay, again, remember all of this comes back, just a quick reminder, because of the issue of Ava, okay? And Ava is chorus, and Erva is chorus, right? So we didn't really get, we got somewhat away, but not totally away.
Is, why can't I marry my wife's sister if she is a widow without children?
Right? So that's still a basic question from Vibur. Vitama de Katav Rachmana. And coming back then to try to use the example of the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, the Katav Rachmana et Shabtotai Tishmaru. Okay? After all, the Torah specifically says to observe Shabbos, ha, lav hachi dache. Okay, here then, okay, without that, it would seem to imply, okay, that one would be a doche. Lo, no, that's not the case. Lav de mechamer, just like we saw in the earlier example of leading the animal. Vafilu hachi lo dache. And here again, in this case, we might argue then it does not doche. Ve'ela de kaimalan da'ate yaseh udache lo ta'aseh. But here we've generally have said we've got this principle that when it's a normal love, an aseh does override a lo ta'aseh. So the Gemara again raises the question, ligmor mehacha de lo dache. So let us learn from here that that principle doesn't apply, okay? V'chitema. And if you want to say, shani lave de Shabbat de chamire, again, same argument, right? That maybe lavim in regards to Shabbos. Is Sid there? No. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I can't, all right. Shani lave de Shabbat de chamire. Okay, that here again we might raise the question in regards to certain laws of Shabbat, that they're more stringent given the nature of Shabbat, right? Vahatane ba'alma kai v'lo kaparich. And again, we say the same thing, that here the Tana in general teaches what it is, and it distinction, right? And he doesn't raise the challenge. The Tanya, because we say again, Yechol amar lo aviv hitameh. Because maybe again, the father might tell him, become tamei. Osha marlo al tachzir. Or the father then tells him, don't return the lost object. Again, implying that kibud av is such a significant, such a significant right issue. Yechol yishmalo. He might listen to him. However, Talmud lomar, but the text tells us, Ishimo v'aviv tirau v'gomer. Okay, that's a, okay, right? You should remember already what the rest of the pasuk is. Okay, since we cited it earlier, we're using the same logic. Kulchem chayavim b'chvodi. Again, all of you are subject or obligated to give glory or honor.
Well, what happens if a parent asks you to move muktzah? A parent asks the child to do it.
That's the case of the.
That would be the example given by leading the donkey.
The mechamer is only midrabanan and muktzah is only midrabanan. Okay. So the example the Torah, the Gemara is telling us, even if it's only a derabana and kibbud av is a deraisa, you don't trump even at the Rabbanan.
That's that case. You both, God requires of all of you. You're all required. Okay? So the Gemara then says, Elam Yishum de'ika lemifrach. Because again, you could challenge it. Malahanach, shekain hechsher mitzvah. Whereas here too, we had preparation for a mitzvah. Hechsher mitzvah, tepuk le mihatam. So the Gemara now asks another question. Preparation for the mitzvah you're going to derive from there. In hachinami. Indeed, that's not the case. Isn't that the case? It says, Ve'et Shabtotai Tishmaru Umikdashi Tira'u. Okay, we have this pasuk that again, it says the two of them, right? So Lamali, why do I need that pasuk then whatsoever?
So we're back to where mitzvah
right
is not those.
Right. So we're going to say here, maybe at this point, we're going to say that the whole issue, our essential issue of whether we could use mitzvah to say is doche doesn't work. We need it. Why? Because of the way the Braita teaches. Yechol yityare adam mimikdash. It's possible that a person might have reverence, okay, or awe for the mikdash.
Without reference to
okay?
God.
But the question is, if he does that, what is his relationship then to say, does he have fear, reverence, etc. to Hashem? Talmud Lomar, at Shabtotai Tishmaru. Therefore, the rest of the pasuk comes and tells us that. Ve'et mikdashi tira'u. So we have different lashon between Shabbat and mikdash. Okay? Ne'emra shmira b'Shabbat, v'ne'emra mora b'mikdash. On the one hand, the language with regarding Shabbat is shamor. Okay? The language with the mikdash is different language. Okay? Ma shmira ha'amura b'Shabbat. Whereas shmira regarding the Shabbat is what? Okay. Lo mi Shabbat atamit yareh. Okay, it's not from Shabbat that you have simply, I'm going to put in the word there, awe or reverence. Ela mimi she's here al haShabbat. But it's one who is careful in their observance. I'm going to use that for his here. Okay?
No, that's one translation. You don't show awe with regard to Shabbos. You show awe with the one who commanded you to keep Shabbos.
Who commanded.
This is Lo Shabbos Atum Asiyeh, that you don't show awe for Shabbos. Ella Mimi to the one.
Mimi is here al haShabbat.
Somebody who commanded
on the one who has.
The one who told you to keep Shabbos.
Okay, I was going to phrase it differently. Okay, you show observance, recognition of the person who is careful, because they also show respect to the one who has commanded the observance of Shabbat. So in other words, you have that a greater observance, therefore,
and
for that.
It says this,
and then likewise, then you flip it. Okay, af moreha amuraba mikdash. So likewise, reverence or awe when it's spoken about the mikdash. Lo mi mikdash atamit yareh. It's not the building itself that you have reverence or awe for. Elamimi she's here al hamikdash, but rather for the one who has, I'm going to use the word precipitated, okay, or directed the whole purpose of the mikdash, because its purpose also is to show kavod, glory to Hashem as well. Okay? Ve'ezohi mora mikdash. So what do we mean then by showing awe or reverence to the base of mikdash? Okay, namely, lo yikanes adam bahar habayit. A person should not enter the area of Har Habayit b'maklo, with his staff, b'matna'alo, okay, with his shoes, b'pundato, with his money belt, so to speak, ubavak she'al gabe raglav, or with dirty feet, dust on his feet, lo ya'asenu kapandaria, and he's not to make it a shortcut, okay? Urekika mikal v'chomer, and he certainly should not be spitting, okay, in the area of Har Habayit and that whole Azar, okay? Ve'ein li ela bizman shebeit hamikdash kayam. But don't we only have this apply at a time when the Beit HaMikdash is in existence? Bizman she'ein Beit HaMikdash kayam. What about that time? when there is no Beis Hamikdash? Minayin, how do we know? Talmud Lomar, Et Shabtotai Tishmaru, Umikdashai Tirau. Because we have this pasuk that says we are to observe Shabbat and to have our reverence for the Mikdash, which means all the time. Okay, we're going to get to that now. Mashmira ha'amura b'Shabbat le'olam, the same way that the observance of Shabbat is le'olam, forever. Afmora ha'amura b'Mikdash le'olam. So likewise, the reverence for the Beit HaMikdash comes from that. Okay. Now, we have a pasuk in Shmot, chapter 35, right? Lo tevaru eish b'chomo shvotechem, right? Is the pasuk. So we're now going to get into, again, another element. It's possible, I might say, okay, and again, remember, this is all still underlying the basic issue of, if we said, all right, initially, does the asay doche elotas?
And we've used up these psukim.
We're using.
We don't have a riot.
We've used a number of examples. We used kavod avayim. We tried to do that. We used binyan beit hamikdash. Okay, and we've kept showing examples. We have one pasuk that says one thing, and then we bring another pasuk that says something else. And how do these?
So we still have a problem with the word aleha in the pasuk about your sister.
Right. Okay, we're going to get to that momentarily.
But that's still the underlying.
Well, we'll see it in a second. Right? It's possible, I might say, let me try another example on this whole issue of asay, okay, is doche lo taseh. Because that was what we suggested as the rationale to be able to say that in our case of Yibum, okay, you had issues of psukim that connected the issue of not marrying your sister and yet fulfilling Yibum. So the Yibum would have been the asay, not marry her is the lo taseh. What's the issue? Okay, that's the whole rationale. Okay, so ela sakedat chamina tite mehavara. So maybe we should learn it from the pasuk that says lo tevaru eish b'chol moshvotech, which is a lav. Okay, but now we've got to deal with the fact that there's a machloket on that pasuk. Okay,
there was already a pasuk that says don't do any.
We'll get to it. Yeah, we're going to say it. All right. So what happens?
Why does it single
all right.
Out
well, we'll get to it in a second. The Tana, as we learned by Debei Rabbi Yishmael in the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael, Lo tivaru eish b'chol moshvotechem, that we have this pasuk says based Rabbi Yishmael. All right. Ma Talmud Lomar. What is it there for? What's it trying to teach us? Ma Talmud Lomar. You're asking, what's it teaching us? Ila Rabbi Yossi, if it's according to the view of Rabbi Yossi, lelav, it's considered regarding a regular love. Okay? An ordinary love.
And it's not a misa.
Okay? All right? It's not over on Kore, and it's not chayav misa. Ila Rabbi Nasa, but if on the same pasuk you go to an opposite, the Baal Machloket of Rabbi Yossi, namely Rabbi Nassan, there you're saying it's lechalek, okay? It's to divide it, to separate it, and to make each prohibition for Shabbat its own act of chiyuv, its own chayav, its own right of potentially kares and mis. Okay, Detanya, as we learned the following. Havara, okay, lelav yatzta, okay. Do we say here that it's gone out for a lav? Okay, divrei Rabbi Yossi, That was the example of the argument that we were just trying to point out. Rabbi Natan Omer lechalek, and Rabbi Nassan disagrees, and it says lechalek. Va'amar Rabba, and Rabba says as follows: Tana Moshavot. Okay, when it teaches the example of Moshavot, kakashale, then we have a problem. Moshavot, ma Talmud lomar. So why then do you have this phrase as part of that pasuk, B'chol Moshvotechem? What is that trying? Is that adding something? Does that clarify? Does that help us decide that it's by one view or another view? Michdei Shabbat, Chovat Hagufi. Since we're saying that observance of Shabbat is a obligation of oneself, of one's person, V'chovat Haguf noheget bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz, and that kind of personal or obligation on the self is applicable regardless in the land of Israel or outside. Moshavot the katav rachmana b'Shabbat lamali. Then in regards to its reference to Shabbat, what place does it have? What's its purpose? Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Amar Talmid Echa. In the name of Rabbi Yishmael, one of the students presented the following explanation. Lafi Shnei Amar, because it said in another pasuk, V'chi hiyeh be'ish chet mishpat mavet v'humat. Okay, that pasuk. Shomea ani, I learned from this, bein b'chol, bein b'Shabbat. In other words, if it's a person that has been found guilty by the Beis Din, okay, of a punishment that requires the death penalty, do we say then that that person is put to death, okay, regardless if it's a weekday or if it's a Shabbos? Okay, and why is that so significant? Because remember, one of the punishments of a Beis Din was Sreifa. And how was Sreifa done? Melting lead. And with a wick, you melt the lead, and then you give him a lead drink there. Okay?
A lead malt.
All right. Uma ani mekayem. But I also maintain the following: mechaleleha mot yumat. Okay? That those who are mechalel Shabbat are put to death. B'shar melachot, in regards to the other prohibited acts of work. Chutz mimitat beitin, but that's with the exception of a death penalty defined or carried out by the court. Oh, eino ela afilo mitat beitin, or do we say no, that this is also going to include a death penalty defined by the court? Uma ani mikayem v'humat, and how then do I establish and clarify, okay, that he was put to death? B'chol v'lo b'Shabbat. Maybe that implies it's done on the weekday, but not on Shabbos. O eino ela afilu b'Shabbat, or perhaps it's also on Shabbat. Talmud lomar. Therefore, my pasuk tells me, Lo tevaru eish b'chol moshvotechem. Okay, that you do not, etc.
And here moshvotechem means where a Beis Din sits.
That's where we're going to get to in just a second, right? And here, why does it say then in all your places which are inhabited? Ulahalan hu omer. Okay, and further on it says, Vahayu eile lachem luchukat mishpat ledorotechem b'chol moshvotechem. Okay, here it shall be for a law, justice, okay, for all generations in all the inhabitants. Namely, ma moshavot ha'amorim lahalan b'beit din. Whereas when we say your inhabitants, your habitations, we are talking about places that have a active Beit Din present, right? Haf moshavot Ha'amurim kan bebeit din. So here too, we understand Moshavot here regarding the pasuk lo tivaru eish b'chol moshvotechem in those places where there is a beit din in existence. Va'amar rachmana lo tivaru, and therefore the Torah says you should not burn. Okay, what happens here? We're going to therefore implies that penalties imposed by a beis din don't override Shabbat. Okay, now let's go on. My love, Rabbi Natan. Isn't this then the view of Rabbi Natan? Da amar lechalek yatzta, because he says that it was separate, divided, to make every single prohibition of Shabbat and its own individual chiyuv. V'ta'ama dekatav rachmana lo tevaru. Okay, lavi hachidache. And here the fact that it comes lo tevaru, it comes to tell us that it does not.
It's not
Okay, it does not override. Lo, no, says the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi. It's like, no, it could be like Rabbi Yossi's view. V'tahave nami Rabbi Yossi, Ema. And it could be that I could say like Rabbi Yossi said. The Amar Rabbi Yossi, who says, Havara lilav yatzta. Okay? Havara gridata. That Havara was separate, and therefore it is
serious.
Okay, it is a individual separate lav, okay, by itself, and therefore it's not on the same level of a lav as the other lavim regarding Shabbat, right? Havara, the Beit Din, bishub tilahu. Okay, why? Because the issue of burning or lighting, okay, regarding the Beit Din, okay, as a death penalty requires, all right, the cooking, lighting of this lead, of this wick for the burning of the lead. Va'amar Rav Shesha, and Rav Shesha says, Ma li bishub tila, ma li bishul simamini. What is the difference between lighting the wick of this lead and the difference between lighting or boiling herbs to dry curtains for the Mishkan? Amar Rav Shimi bar Ashi, Hai Tana, okay, this Tana, okay, what happens? Lo, and I'm going to read into here, doesn't learn that the court death penalty overrides Shabbat. Mishum da'ate esay v'dache lo ta'ase. Okay, that the asay comes and overrides the lo ta'ase. Ela mishum demaite mikal v'chomer. But rather he learns it in another way from mikal v'chomer. V'hachi kama. And this is what he means to say. Ma'ani mekayem mechalaleha mot yumat. How do I establish and understand then that it says that those who desecrate it will put to death? Bishar melachot, with regards to the other prohibitions of work vis-a-vis Shabbat. Chutz mimitat beitin, with the exception of a death penalty decided by the court. Aval mitat beitin, but the death penalty of the court. Dachya Shabbat mikal v'chomer, that it overrides Shabbat from kal v'chomer, and we'll just go over a little bit on the top of Zayin Amud Aleph. Uma avodah shehi chamura v'doche Shabbat. Whereas work, which is
no. Avodah here means a korban tamid. Avodah of the Kohen, it means a korban.
Whereas the korban tamid, okay, and we say it's a stringency, and that does override Shabbat. Ritzicha doche ota, and murder would override even that. Okay, because I was going to say mimizbech.
No, the case here is
right. That's the example I was going to use. Okay, all right. Shneamar me'im mizbachi tekachenu lamut. There's our pasuk cited right there. Okay. Shabbat shenidchet mipnei avodah eino din shetehei ritzicha doche ota. I've seen it like therefore all the more the kavachomer that if we say me'im mizbachi tekachenu lamut, okay, and the avodah normally overrides Shabbat, then certainly an act of murder, if that's the case.
Killing this Kohen overrides.
Just,
is doing
well, I don't know if
avodah.
it's just the Kohen, okay, or that overrides in his Dochen. And we'll stop right there because we're going to get into a new item.
If A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. That's the
Okay. That's the piece. Like I said, it was not an easy Gemara.
Sorry. No, I just told me so I would not have a result of fear that might kill me.
Okay, Rabbanan Kaddish. All right.
Amen.
Amen.